Welcome back to the English Nook. Today, we are stepping right back into C1 territory to dissect a topic that is reshaping not just our careers, but the very fabric of human expression.
That's right. We're moving past the basic tutorials. We aren't looking at how to write a prompt or how to generate an image. Instead, we're pointing the camera at the bigger, more pressing question. Should we?
Exactly. We are looking at the ghost in the machine. Ethan, when you look at the sheer velocity of AI development right now, what is your primary reaction? Is it awe or is it anxiety?
Honestly, Maya, it's a volatile mix of both. On one hand, the sheer efficiency is staggering. Tasks that used to take human teams days are now executed in seconds. But on the other hand, it feels like we are sprinting in the dark. We are racing to automate everything before we truly understand the societal cost.
Sprints in the dark. I love that imagery because it highlights the massive gap between technological capability and ethical maturity. We are witnessing an unprecedented reliance on algorithms, yet many of these systems operate on black box thinking.
For our listeners tracking our C1 vocabulary, that concept of a black box is crucial. It means we can see what goes into the AI, and we can see the spectacular output, but the internal decision-making process is entirely opaque, hidden from human view. We don't actually know how it reached its conclusion.
And that opacity is where the real danger lies. It leads directly to issues like algorithmic bias, where the AI simply mirrors and amplifies human prejudices hidden within its training data. It's not an objective, perfect mind. It's a mirror of our own flawed history.
Exactly. And as a creator, this hits incredibly close to home. When an algorithm can generate a script, a painting, or a piece of music in the blink of an eye, it forces us to confront a heavy question. What happens to creative integrity?
That is the core of our debate today. Are these tools liberating human creativity by removing the boring, repetitive work? Or are they diluting it? Are we facing a genuine existential threat to what it means to be an artist, a writer, or a thinker?
It's a fascinating, high-stakes discussion. And for our advanced learners, mastering this topic means being able to articulate abstract, philosophical arguments without relying on simplistic AI is good or AI is bad statements. It's all about the gray areas.
Precisely. Throughout this episode, we'll be exploring that delicate balance between technological efficiency and human soul. And, as always, we will wrap up our discussion with our signature vocabulary review, breaking down the exact nuances of terms like existential threat, black box thinking, and algorithmic bias.
So, if you are ready to push your comprehension skills and join the front lines of modern intellectual debate, make sure you are subscribed to the English Nook. Your support is what allows us to keep building these advanced pathways.
Lean in, grab your coffee, and let's dive into the machine. Ethan, let's start with the creators. Are we obsolete? Or are we just evolving? So, Ethan, let's confront the elephant in the room. Historically, automation was reserved for repetitive manual labor. We built machines to weave fabric, assemble cars, and calculate massive spreadsheets. The prevailing wisdom was that human creativity, art, writing, philosophy, was our impenetrable fortress.
Right. We thought the soul was safe. We assumed that because an algorithm doesn't feel, it could never truly create. But the current landscape completely subverts that assumption. AI isn't just knocking on the door of the creative arts, it's practically kicked it down.
It has. But here is the nuance. Is a generative model actually creating? Or is it just executing a highly sophisticated form of statistical plagiarism?
If you ask the developers, they'll argue it's learning the underlying patterns of human expression, much like an art student studying the old masters. But if you ask the artists, they see an existential threat. They see their life's work being scraped into a dataset without consent, used to train a machine that will eventually price them out of the market.
And that is where the erosion of creative integrity happens. It's an economic argument wrapped in a philosophical crisis. If a company can generate a marketing campaign or a visual asset for pennies in 3 seconds, the human designer who takes 3 days becomes a luxury item. We risk turning art into a pure commodity, something fast, cheap, and ultimately disposable.
Exactly. We are prioritizing convenience over craft. And when you look at the industry, it creates this intense pressure to conform. Writers and designers are being told to use AI to speed up their output. So instead of humanizing the machine, we end up automating the humans. We are forcing creatives to act like factory line managers, editing machine-generated content rather than original thought.
Automating the humans. That is a terrifyingly accurate way to frame it. We become the bottleneck in our own creative processes. But let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Doesn't this technology democratize expression? Someone who can't draw can now bring a complex visual story to life. Someone who struggles with syntax can articulate a brilliant philosophical concept.
It absolutely does. And that's the paradox. It lowers the barrier to entry. It grants a strange kind of autonomy to people who were previously locked out of the creative world. But we have to ask ourselves, if everyone can create everything instantly, does anything remain meaningful? If the effort is reduced to zero, does the value drop to zero as well?
That question right there is the definition of abstract C1 reasoning. It's not about whether the tool works. It clearly does. It's about what happens to human value when the struggle of creation is removed from the equation.
And navigating that exact gray area is what we have to figure out next, especially when we look at how these systems actually make their choices behind closed doors.
All right, Ethan. Let's step away from the grand philosophical theories for a minute and get real. We've all seen the dazzling promo videos for these AI tools. They make it look like you just whisper a poetic sentence into a text box and boom, a flawless masterpiece appears. But what is the actual day-to-day experience like?
It's an absolute exercise in patience, Maya. The reality is an endless cycle of trial and error. You write a prompt, the AI completely misses the nuance, so you tweak it. You try to fix one detail, and the entire image or paragraph completely breaks. It's not collaboration. It feels like arguing with a brilliant but deeply stubborn toddler.
A toddler with access to the entire internet. That's exactly what it is. And that brings us right back to that term we mentioned earlier, black box thinking. Because you don't know why the machine made a mistake, you can't logically fix it. You're just throwing different words at the wall, hoping something sticks. It turns the creative process into a game of guesswork.
Exactly. And the most frustrating part is the illusion of intelligence. Because these models speak with absolute confidence, you trust them. But the moment you push them into a highly specialized topic, you hit a wall. I was trying to analyze a complex piece of code last week, and the AI kept confidently generating a solution that looked elegant, but was completely fundamentally broken. It was a beautiful lie.
And that's the danger of a system that prioritizes plausibility over truth. It's designed to sound right, not to be right. For creators, this means your editing skills actually have to be sharper than ever before. You can't just outsource your thinking. If you do, you end up publishing content that has no soul, or worse, content that is riddled with errors.
It completely changes the definition of skill. The value shifts from the ability to execute the work to the ability to curate and criticize it. But honestly, Maya, after spending 4 hours tweaking prompts to get a single paragraph right, I usually look at my screen and think, I could have just written this myself in 20 minutes.
The ultimate irony. We use automation to save time, but the friction of managing the automation actually ends up consuming more time. We are trading the friction of creation for the friction of administration.
Precisely. We've become prompt managers instead of artists. And that realization is a massive wake-up call for anyone who thinks their human intuition is easily replaceable.
It really is. It turns out that navigating the machine requires a lot more human touch than we were led to believe. And that brings us directly to how we can actually protect our own standards in this weird new ecosystem. So, if the machine isn't going away and our human intuition is still irreplaceable, how do we coexist? We can't just boycott AI, but we also can't let it dilute our work. What is the advanced strategy here, Ethan?
It comes down to a concept borrowed from the chess world, becoming a centaur.
A centaur? Like the mythical creature half human, half horse?
Exactly. In chess, a centaur team pairs a human player with an AI engine. The AI handles the brutal, massive calculations, but the human retains control over the overall strategy, intuition, and creative risks. When applied to our careers, it means you don't let the AI drive the car. You use it to build the engine.
That is a fantastic framework. It shifts the dynamic from substitution to augmentation. But to do that effectively as a C1 professional, you have to be incredibly disciplined about your inputs. You have to treat AI as a junior assistant, not an oracle. You review, you challenge, and you heavily edit everything it gives you.
Absolutely. You have to establish what I call original thought boundaries. Before you even open an AI tool to help you brainstorm or write, you must force yourself to sit down with a blank piece of paper first. Write down your raw ideas, your unique perspective, your emotional hook. If you don't anchor your work in your own mind first, the algorithm's voice will completely swallow yours.
That is a crucial piece of advice. Because these models are trained on average human data, their outputs naturally gravitate toward the average. If you rely on them entirely, your work becomes painfully generic. To maintain your creative integrity, your unique flaws, your strange associations, and your personal stories are actually your greatest competitive advantages.
It's true. The value of a C1 communicator or creator in the future won't be their ability to synthesize information. The machine owns that now. The value will be in your authenticity and your willingness to take creative risks that an algorithm, by its very nature, would filter out as statistically unlikely.
So, the ultimate takeaway is paradoxically simple. The more automated the world becomes, the more valuable your raw humanity becomes.
Exactly. Don't try to beat the machine at being a machine. Excel at being a human. Master the tool, but fiercely protect the ghost inside your own machine.
A perfect note to transition on. Let's make sure our listeners have the exact vocabulary they need to articulate this strategy in their own professional lives. And here we are at our final stop today, the word tour. At a C1 level, fluency isn't just about knowing long words. It's about choosing the precise word to shift the entire tone of a boardroom or an intellectual debate.
Exactly. Let's break down 5 power phrases from today's episode that will immediately elevate your professional vocabulary.
First on our map, automate.
This means to convert a process or facility to be operated by automatic equipment or software.
We talked about the danger of forcing creatives to act like line managers. Essentially, automating the humans. It's a fantastic verb to use when discussing efficiency versus human labor.
Word number 2, black box thinking.
This refers to a system or process where the inputs and outputs are clear, but the internal workings are completely hidden or opaque.
If you're discussing AI decision-making or a company process that lacks transparency, this is the exact sophisticated phrase you need.
Word number 3, algorithmic bias.
This occurs when a computing system reflects and reinforces the human prejudices of its creators or its training data.
Instead of just saying AI makes mistakes, Using algorithmic bias shows you understand the sociological and technical root of the problem.
Word number 4, creative integrity.
This is the moral and artistic commitment to keeping your work original, honest, and uncorrupted by external pressures, like outsourcing your thought to a machine.
Protecting your creative integrity is going to be the defining challenge for the next generation of professionals.
And finally, word number 5, existential threat.
A threat to the very existence or survival of something.
We used it to describe how artists feel about generative models. It's a heavy, impactful term to use when the stakes couldn't possibly be higher.
A stellar list for today. If you can weave these terms into your next professional discussion or English essay, you are going to sound incredibly articulate and deeply informed.
Now, we want to hear from our community of thinkers. Where do you stand on this? Do you see AI as a helpful assistant that boosts your productivity? Or do you view it as an existential threat to human originality?
Leave a comment below. Try to use at least one of today's word tour terms in your answer. We look forward to reading your insights and engaging with your ideas every single week.
And if you want to keep pushing past the intermediate plateau and dominating these C1 discussions, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It lets us know you're ready for the journey.
Share this episode with a colleague or a fellow creator who is trying to find their own balance with technology. Let's keep humanizing the digital world together.
Thank you for opening the Nook with us today. Keep creating, protect your inner ghost, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Take care, everyone.